It's very it allows them to go to Richmond Row and have a drink and still get something to eat, and it shares the wealth. Because I've actually never seen an economic report on what the economic benefits are of things like Rock the Park and Sunfest. I worked at a restaurant on Richmond Road during Sunfest. It was just a slight blip in the business. I also cleaned hotel rooms many years ago in a boutique hotel off Covent near the market. It also just resulted in a blip. A lot of the people that attend these events, they're local. Some of them are regional. So I would really like to see what that economic boost actually is that that puts so much a pressure or burden on the neighborhoods. I think you need to look at a broad, like I find the report too narrow. It also doesn't address the fact that last summer, another event, a comedy event, which everyone was looking forward to, got canceled. And that's because Rock the Park caused so much damage to Harris Park structure because it rained so much. It got canceled, and no one's talking about whether these events have outgrown their space. People can't use those events. The damage that was done last summer has never been repaired. It can't be repaired because the ground is so compacted. So none of that is looking at whether these events have just outgrown their space. I know the neighborhood would like to have the park back, and we desperately need a dog park, and there's no place to put it. Too large, no extensions of the event, damage done. No one talks, another thing that was raised is just the sheer amount of garbage that is left behind in Harris Park after these events. No one cleans it up. Residents have started to investigate the impacts of the garbage. One resident takes photographs. We know the garbage goes into the river, it goes into the woodlands. There's just no follow-up. The report also failed to mention that people want a waste-free event. This means where there is pressure on vendors to, if they're serving up hot dogs, to serve them in napkins as opposed to putting them in, even if they're recyclable containers, it's still garbage, still something the taxpayer has to pay for. Sorry, I don't want to. So I feel like these events should actually be smaller, not bigger.
30 seconds.
Because they're just they're just too big for the surrounding environment. So Sunfest has broken up. There's some at Dundas Place. There's still some in Victoria Park. That's better than just having it all in Victoria Park. And I think Harris Park, I think people really want to reclaim that park so that people can have more of, and share the park more than it is right now without any damages. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Velastro. That was exactly 5 minutes. Looking to the gallery for any other speakers. Thank you. Once you get to the mic, please state your name, and then I'll tell you when you have your 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Alfredo Cachaj. I'm representing here Sunfest.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. We actually take with great reception the opportunity that the events will be extended for an hour. Not necessarily that will be programming until that time, but as you know, sometimes with weather incidents or some kind of other delays, it allows us to continue with the programming. You know, as I said, the intention is not to program until midnight, but at least to have that space that will allow us, to deal with any emergency issues, stuff like that. Also, going back to the points of the lady here that mentioned, yes, there are economic impact reports on different festivals. Sunfest has done several. Last year we did one in conjunction with Tourism London, which they have a copy of that, and it's the millions of dollars that we bring to the community as a result of the festival. And I believe the other festivals do exactly the same. impact in the hospitality area, restaurants, hotels, everyone. And almost 25% now of people who come to Sunfest come from outside of London, Ontario, which means incredible, tremendous impact on the economy of our city. I believe that what we are considering a little bit unfair is the penalties that they want to impose to festivals if they go over the 90 decibels. I believe there has to be a total understanding of what the 90 decibels means. When you put a brass band in the banjo without any amplification, they will exceed very easy the 90 decibels. So it's but we're talking about residential areas. When someone is playing at the banjo, the 90 decibels won't go over 100 meters, stuff like that. So those are some of the things that I need to be considered. But again, once again, we appreciate the fact that the possibility of expanding the hour for festivals and events. And once again, this is the city of music designated by UNESCO. And when you took a look of the number of events that happen during the summer, there are really not that many in comparison, So we bring life to the community. We bring economic impact to the community. We foster race relations among our citizens. And I think that's what really makes our city a much better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Looking to gallery for any additional speakers. I see none. And looking online. Okay. Just give a couple more seconds. All right, looking to committee to close the PPM. Moved by Councilor McAllister, seconded by Councilor Pelosa. Let's call the question.
Russell votes yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, looking to committee to receive the report. Moved by Councilor Purtle. Looking for a seconder, seconded by Councilor McAllister. Okay, looking at committee to any discussion, any comments? Councilor Pelosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the public coming out for this one and the feedback that we've gotten. The Great Outdoors Comedy Festival was a loss, and it was going to be sold out event as a Tourism London board member. Hoping we can get it back in the future years. A question for you to staff, a couple different portions. As we've heard today, we know that floodplains and the water events that we're having, when there's the fees to book the different venues in London for outdoor events, is there adequate remediation fees included in those rental fees for when there is a water event or the event was tremendous and the grounds are ruined, that we actually have our costs covered by the rental fees versus taxpayers shouldering that?
Thank you, Councilor. Ms. Pollack.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. We are doing a comprehensive review right now of the special event fees that are included in the fees and charges bylaw, particularly because of the two 100-year events that we've just seen back to back in Harris Park. So once the policy changes are implemented, we will then look at all of our supporting documents and tools and resources to make sure that they align to the changes we've made in the policy. But a comprehensive review of our fees are on the docket. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
And when is the anticipated quarter that we're expected to see that in 2025?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we're currently looking to have the fees and charges updates, I think, in 2026, so they'll be implemented for the next multi-year budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Hey, honestly, a little bit longer of a wait than I was anticipating, realizing that having seen the social media posts of attendees at some of these events in Terrace Park, the park's absolutely destroyed, which takes it out of use for future events as we move forward. The next question I have is in regards to the decibels. I would just like some feedback on that. I know between the way that London's shaped and being a Ward 12 councillor, for those who don't live in the south end, the sound tends to carry up and into the south end, partway along the water into their ends, that even by South Dome, Warrencliffe, you can sing along sometimes, where I know people downtown were like, oh, it didn't seem that loud, but we're hearing it, our homes are vibrating. So very mindful of if there was weather delays, absolutely would love that the show that's on to be able to continue, finish, and the performers that came in, but residents at this end, looking to see what could be done or where you register that noise decibel reading from.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. And through the chair, we've, in our proposed policy, we've done some work on modernizing our sound policy and where you listen to that. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Katolik as his area works collaboratively with us on this sound bylaw.
Thank you. And through the chair, we measure the sound at the point of reception in residential areas. And when it is over 90 decibels, we radio into the front of house to the system that's controlling the noise and ask that it be reduced. There is a reality that depending on where you are in residential areas, you may hear very little sound. And when you go further down, you may hear more sound. But generally, it is under 90 decibels. I have personally measured the sounds most recently at the Glorious Sons concert at Harris Park, and it was under 90 decibels at the point of reception in residential areas. But however, if you do measure the sound at the concert, most definitely it is over 90, but that's why people are there. So we focus very much on where the complaints are going to come from, and they are at the point of reception in residential areas.
Thank you, Mr. Katolik. Councillor Pelosa.
Thank you. Follow up on the same point through you to staff, realizing that the review of fees and charges bylaw might have more clarity on this coming in. The report states that for the amplified sound at events, violations for $2,000 penalty. Looking to see if it's you charge them a fee of $2,000 that they violate it and they just keep going for the rest of the night or the rest of the day if it's a multi-venue or like multi-day activity that people are attending. Is it $2,000 per day, $2,000 for the entire night, or is it like every so many, like every half hour you let it keep going, there's another $2,000? Because I know for some big acts, like it's going to be nothing. It's just going to be, they'll do what they want and they pack up and leave town.
Thank you, Councillor. To Ms. Pawlik.
Thanks for the question. So the fee is charged once per day. So it would be, it could be accumulated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. A follow-up through you then. If it's currently once per day, when your review of the fees and bylaws come back in a future date, would you automatically look into different municipalities to see if that's standard once a day fees, or if it's once, because if it's a full day concert, you get charged at 9 a.m. you're going to blow through till 10 midnight. Like, I'm not okay with that. So looking to see if that would come back in your review or if you need a direction from committee, which I would do.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. And through the chair, in 2025, early 2025, my service area is undergoing a review of all of our user fees, and we will be bringing those back in the fall of 2025 as part of the consolidated fee and charges bylaw that will be coming before council in fall of 2025. So we'd be more than happy, and we are currently looking at what other municipalities are doing, and we would be more than happy to bring back some revised fees at that report in fall 2025. I believe it's September that would come into effect 2026.
Thank you, Councillor.
So just, I'm understanding that you wouldn't need direction, that it's now on your radar and that report's coming anyways. Okay, I see a nod, so I'm happy with that as I do believe staff will look into taking that under advisement. And that concludes my questions in this report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Looking to committee for comments, questions. Councillor Pribble, please go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair to the staff. I did have actually certain experiences this past summer and fall with some loud music as well. And I wanted to ask you that I was actually present when our staff was there and measuring the decibels as well. And it was based on type of the music, because there was, for example, going into the high 80s, 90s, and it wasn't actually as bad. Then there could have been, we were down to about 70, and it was actually worse because of the bass and because of the vibrations. The decibels, is it the only indicator that we could actually follow, or is there anything else that we could potentially do? And is there anything else potentially that other municipalities do in terms of controlling it? Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I believe this is Mr. Katolik.
Yes, thanks for the question. And through the chair, one thing that we could do and have done through the sound bylaw is to ask that the event organizer or patio or whoever we're dealing with hire an acoustic engineer, because the counselor is absolutely right that at 90 decibels, it might not be as negatively impacting the neighborhood as 70 decibels because of the bass. And the reality is that the bands that are coming in right now through different genres, there's a lot of bass, and that's the complaints that we're getting. So that is an option that we can always engage in, and it's already in the sound bylaw.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you very much. No more questions.
Thank you, Counselor. Looking again to committee online, I see Counselor Trusso. Please go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you very much. I do have a few questions. I'll try to keep this as short as I can. During the orientation week at Western, as people here know, there were a lot of complaints, and they were not coming from, well, some of them were, but many of them were coming from as far away as north of Fantrell Park Road, Sunningdale, and this was because of the bass. And no, you don't get to sing along. You just hear your windows rattling because of the bass. So I hope this is taken very seriously, because it's not just a question of decibels, and it's not just a question of measuring a couple of nearby points of reception. We have to understand the acoustics of this, and I don't think that we've done a great job in terms of understanding that. So I just wanted to put that out there. In terms of the hours of operation, I don't think it would be a good idea, and I'm not going to support just granting a blanket extension until midnight. Because if you grant the extension until midnight, presumably it's going to be programmed during that last hour. I like the suggestion that was made that we maybe need to leave a little bit of extra time to make up for canceled parts of what's already been scheduled. Nobody wants to show up for a show and have the reason they came canceled. I'm wondering through staff, is there some way that something flexible like that could be accommodated into the issue of the hours of operation?
Thank you, Counselor. I'll go to Ms. Smith.
Thank you. And through the chair, as we have done once or twice in the past through delegated authority, I can give permission to extend, for example, in weather events. I have done that once or twice under my purview when the weather has caused a cancellation and we've extended for half an hour. So that is already included as part of the policy.
So if I understand your answer then through the chair, we can keep it at 11 o'clock and still have that flexibility for canceled portions of the program. Is that right?
Thank you. Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Would any
Counselor.
changes?
Counselor.
I'm sorry. Through the
Go
chair,
ahead.
would any changes to this resolution be needed in order to encourage staff to look at some of the particular issues that are being discussed here? Or are you going to take into account the feedback that you're hearing today?
Thank you, Counselor. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. And through the chair, in September, we brought forward a proposed policy, and that was the one we went out and engaged on. So currently that proposed policy says sound can go to a midnight amplified sound in the downtown areas. So if you want to make any changes, to the proposed policy, we would need a direction to do that today to then go to council. And then in December, we would bring back that revised policy to committee.
Thank you, Counselor.
Has any effort been made to gauge the amount of time it takes concert goers to at the end of the performances to get up, gather their things, get back to their cars? Do we have a sense of how long that takes? Because what we heard from the neighborhood representative was that this is something that can take a while, and it does have an impact on the neighborhood later on. Do we have a sense of how long that takes? And let me be very, very specific, and let's talk about Harris Park.
Thank you, Counselor. I will
Uh,
go to Ms. Pawlik.
Thank you, and through the chair. So we don't have an exact time for you, but of course, we all attend these events, and it can take several hours for the entire area to clear. We don't have that data, though, to share for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you, Counselor.
So really, in reality, in fact, on the ground, when we talk about an 11 o'clock shutdown time, we're really not talking about all the impacts on the neighborhood are done at 11, and consequently the same thing if we extend it an hour. Now, the next question I want to raise deals with the difference between fees and the fee schedule and fines. Because while you represent that the fee schedule is going to be looked at comprehensively later on, the question of fines is within this document. So I want to raise a concern that to have a $200 loss of, I guess that's in the nature of a fine, is it could be a lot for a small operator, but it could be insignificant for a large operator. Would there be some way of, instead of using one number, one size fits all, to have more of a scaled schedule, especially if we're dealing with, on the one hand, a not-for-profit or community group, and on the other hand, a for-profit operator? Would that be possible to write into the rules?
Thank you, Counselor. Ms. Pawlik.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and through the chair. It is possible. We'd have to take that back and have conversations with our legal department, because we would have to clarify categories of events in order to ensure a fair and transparent process for all of the event operators. What's included in the policy is not a fee, it's a security deposit. And already built into the policy is the ability to approve special exemptions through the regulation clause. So we could approve exemptions for small event operators that would see the $2,000 security as a barrier to operating. Thank you.
And
Thank you,
at the
Counselor.
thank you to the chair. At the same time, then, for the very large operators, is there a way of having a larger figure?
Thank you, Counselor. Ms. Pawlik.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and through the chair. The $2,000 was based off of our municipal scan and looking at what other cities are doing, and it was deemed to be a reasonable measure, but we are at council's will if they wish to increase that deposit. Thank you.
And
Thank you. Counselor, through the chair, please. You
And
have
through the
53
chair.
seconds left.
I understand that. So would you need further direction from council if we wanted to look at increasing that security deposit for operators who have maybe revenues over a certain amount?
Thank you. Ms. Pawlik.
Thank you, and through the chair, yes, we would. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay, so that would need to be an amendment today, if I understand that through the chair? Yes. Okay. Just finally to say thank you very much for including the water aspect to this. This has been very problematic in the past, and I'm really glad to see that you've included that. And for the most part, I think this is a document that I can support, but there are a few changes that I would like to see.
Thank you, Counselor. I have Counselor Pribble next. You have 4 minutes and 13 seconds.
Again, through the chair to the staff, and my fellow councilor mentioned the orientation week, and I just want to inform him and that actually my ward this year, I believe, was even more influenced by those first orientation week celebrations. And I did have a meeting with Mr. Mathers and Mr. Catholic, and we talked about, or they proposed certain proactive actions for next year, so that we don't go through another year what we did this year. And I was really happy with what I heard, but I just want to give you an opportunity if you wanted to address or make any comments towards this event for next year. I'll leave it up to you, but I do like and your suggestions for the proactive actions for following year. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I have Counselor Rahman next.
Oh, can I just make a
Oh,
point of
sorry,
order?
sorry, Counselor. I missed you there. I am going to go to committee member first, Counselor Rahman, and then I will come back to you. So Counselor McAllister.
I just want to make a point of order that apparently we're having technical issues and nobody can hear. Well, Counselor Trusso can, but I'm getting messages saying that they can't hear.
Thank you, Counselor. Just give me a second. Okay, we're just going to take a little pause to get that sound back on. Okay, we're going to need some time to fix these technical difficulties, so I'm going to ask the committee for a small reset, but before we do that, I just want to look at IT just to see how much time they might need. Okay, looking at committee, we need to go on a little recess. 15 minutes is what has been requested me from IT, so I'm just looking for a motion. Moved by Councilor McAllister. Seconded by me. Calling the question. Let's do that by hand. All in favor? All opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we have a recess for 15 minutes. We will be back at 1:50. All right, everybody. Thank you for just waiting for those IT issues. Now, we were unable to get that resolved, so apparently the Zoom recording is working, so we will be posting that online at the end of this meeting. Okay. So leading off, we were on item 3.1, and I believe the last speaker was Councilor Pribble, and he was asking staff for some comments or questions. So I'm just going to look at Councilor Pribble just to see if he wants to continue. Okay, Councilor.
Yes, I would like to continue, and I would like to receive a feedback from our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Do you mind just reiterating the questions and the comments that you had previously? I won't count that to your time.
Yes, in my comments, they were including the first week of orientation at Western University and the meeting that I had with Mr. Matus and Mr. Catholic and some proactive actions, proposals that came from our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I will look to Mr. Catholic.
Yes, through the chair, thanks for that question. In the past, we have had information from both Western and Fanshawe on their Frosh Week events. We will endeavor in the future to get that information earlier on in the year and ask for more specific information on the sound design, on the stage location. We had no idea where Western was setting up their stage and what direction it was pointing at this year. It was a little bit of a switch from previous years. And we also, within our sound bylaw, have a clause that we can engage the services of a professional engineer at the cost of the event coordinator. So we've suggested that to event coordinators previously. This is outside of the special events policy because it is on private land, and Western and Fanshawe have a specific clause within the sound bylaw. So we will attempt to more proactively address these issues in 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Catholic. Councilor?
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you, Counselor. I have Counselor Rama next. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. First, I want to say thank you to staff for the work on the special events policy. I noticed that in the consultation with residents, residents that were consulted were mainly in the downtown core. I'm just wondering if residents in the Hyde Park area were also consulted recently about any changes to the special event policy.
Thank you, Counselor Smith.
Thank you. And through the chair, we posted a Get Involved survey and promoted that through a number of social media networks. So that was open to all Londoners across the entire city. And then on top of that, council directed us to hold a community meeting for those neighborhood community associations and residents living specifically in the downtown. So our Get Involved survey was promoted far and wide across for all Londoners to respond to.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know there are some concerns with residents around the Hyde Park Village Green. I did have questions regarding 4.5, the accessibility. See, it reads as event operators will comply with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. I want to just look into that a little bit further and get some more information from you on that matter. Specifically, and through you, Chair, I'm just wondering, in summer 2024, there were updates to the special events and AODA compliance documentation from the province. Part of that update includes more extensive need for accessibility considerations with events. And being that we're considering doing a centralized portal where people can book tickets and things like that from, I'm just wondering, how will that compliance and that duty to comply fall within the city as well as the event organizer? And then I have some follow-up questions on that.
Thank you, Counselor. I will go to Ms. Pawlik.
Thank you, and through the chair. The requirement in the policy is specific to making sure that event operators are in compliance with the legislation. But in addition, there is an administrative procedures manual that will be supplementary to the policy, and it will have a template that will help event operators understand their requirements and responsibilities. That template's being developed through our Anti-Racism and Anti-Oppression Division and in consultation with the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. And through the Get Involved site and through our advocacy, for instance, with our accessibility committee for the city, have they made any recommendations that further supersede what's in the update to the legislation in terms of how people access any particular supports at some of these events?
Thank you, Ms. Pawlik.
Thank you, and through the chair, no, we have not heard anything that would be in addition or above and beyond the legislative requirements, but we do recognize that there are specialized event spaces, and so we will have specialized instructions and support for event operators in London. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. I really do think that we have the opportunity to really bring our events in the community alongside making them more accessible this coming year and going forward by way of strengthening our policy and procedure. And as you mentioned, with just even adding as an appendix to the procedure that new special events documentation for 2024 that was just updated this summer. One of those things is for the public to be able to access things like hearing support at events. So right now, the onus is really on the individual to communicate with the event organizers of their needs when they're attending an event. If we have a centralized portal, it would be wonderful to see accessibility at the forefront of that portal and how we make that event as accessible as possible. So having things like drop downs and menus where people can actually outline the accessibility support they need when they're purchasing a ticket at a ticketed event, or how to better engage with the event organizer on what the opportunities are to receive accessibility supports at the site. I do think that there is a lot of work that we can be doing as a community to embrace making our events more accessible. And so how we do that is, I think we have to set the gold standard. And so My personal thought on this is I would love to see us go further with the tools and resources we have. The other thing is I'm not sure that all event organizers know that if they have more than one staff, they are to provide training on accessibility to their staff. I'm just wondering how we'll go about communicating that with event organizers.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Pawlik.
Thank you, and through the chair, we will be promoting and holding meetings and explaining the changes that happen through this process with event operators. We'll be offering one-on-one support. So we will make sure that the changes are communicated widely to all of those folks that are looking to host events in London. And I think in addition, the templates that are created in consultation with the Accessibility Advisory Committee in our ARAO division will be offering capacity building opportunities and training on what those templates look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. And through you, I also had a question about 4.8 transportation to events. Specifically under Part A, it says event organizers or operators, will promote active and public transportation options for the public to attend special events. I'm just wondering, with events at Hyde Park Village Green, this is something that I know the BIA has been involved in conversations with, as well as others that activate the space. Being that there is no on-site parking and parking does seem to be an issue, they've made arrangements and special arrangements to be able to use nearby lots. But there's a segment, instead of sending people all the way around into Hyde Park Village Green from Gainsborough onto Hyde Park, there is a small pathway that exists between a woodlot. And I'm just wondering, I know that as the Hyde Park BIA activates the space alongside the Lions and other groups, one of the things they do is they actually put volunteers at both entrances to help promote the community walking through that area. Of course, it is very muddy and things like that. So I'm just wondering if there's any plans to work with the Hyde Park BIA and others on making that an accessible path.
Thank you, Councillor. I will go to Mr. Yeoman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor, for that. We are actively working on that with the BIA as well. It is on our capital program for next year to make improvements and make sure the linkages are there.
Thank you, Councillor. You have 18 seconds. Okay, Councillor Rahman is done. I will look to committee for any other comments. None. I would look to my fabulous vice chair to fly for a second. I'd like to make some comments and possibly an amendment.
Thank you. I have the chair recognizing Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. So I have made comments on this before, and I do got to say I really appreciate, again, the work that staff has done. I made those comments already, so I will not continue. But I am still kind of holding on the position of just that hour extension from the 11 to 12 for the amplified sound. You know, as I said, like I myself, I'm about 900 meters direct line of sight from Harris Park. I can hear it very clearly. I do get some regular feedback when we have events. I do enjoy the events. I'm just looking for that balance for the community. I would also point out that, you know, like downtown, we do have a big change going on. We do know that there's going to be a lot more residential, so it is a little bit more on the neighborhood side than it was in the past, and that's probably how it is going to be moving in the future. So with that, I do have a motion, and that motion is to not extend the amplified sound to 12 and leave it at 11, but to also, within exceptional circumstances, give the deputy city manager the ability to extend any type of event, considering whatever the case may be, to 60 minutes rather than 45 minutes that is previously within the in the report or in the policy. So that does give the ability for the deputy city manager, case by case, to extend an event if there's a big, like, you know, rainfall or any type of issue that may hold something up. You still have that ability, so we can still hold those events. So that is my motion. I do want to circulate that to committee, and I would move that motion, and I would look for a seconder on that.
Thank you. Does the clerk have the wording already? Okay, so that's just going into eScribe and up on the screen. I'll give colleagues a moment to see that. Councillor Trousseau, is this you seconding? Yes, okay. So it is officially on the floor with a mover of Councillor Ferrer and a seconder in Councillor Trousseau, starting my speakers list on the amendment that you see in eScribe and on the screen. Okay, if there's gonna be no questions or comments, we could call the question. Okay, Counselor McAllister.
Thank you, through the presiding officer. So I'm just looking in terms of, you know, the review that already was undertaken. If staff could speak to the reasoning in terms of raising from 11 to 12. Was this something in terms of feedback we received from special events coordinators that they really needed that extra hour? I'm just wondering if we can get more clarity on that.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, and through the chair, thank you for the question. The proposed change to the policy was based on conversations we had when we first initiated a review of the special events policy with event organizers. In addition to that, currently in the downtown at Covent Garden Market, amplified sound is allowed to go to midnight. So we were also looking at aligning the times with respect to what is already happening in the downtown on both Dundas Place, Harris Park, and Victoria Park.
Counselor McAllister?
Thank you, through the presiding officer. Just a follow up to that. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I got distracted by what was going on back there. Lost my train of thought. Just give me a second. In terms of what's being proposed in the amendment, the delegated authority, could you maybe elaborate in terms of under what conditions you would use that? I know you previously mentioned in terms of, extreme weather events, but is there any other time you would use that, or just in those cases?
Ms. Smith?
Thank you, and through the chair, I have used the delegated authority twice in the past, and both were for weather events, and it was thunder and lightning, where we had to stop for the safety of the performers and, of course, the safety of Londoners. We had to pause the event, so we paused the events both time, and then we were able to start them up, and that allowed the music to continue, which, as you can imagine, for event organizers and people attending, these are very large events, and so we didn't want to miss out on the potential costs and ramifications of having to cancel the event, which we would have if it continued, the extreme weather.
Counselor McAllister?
Thank you, and again, through the presiding officer. In terms of the economic impact of having that extra hour, was that something that was identified in terms of the feedback that was making a difference for events, that they needed that extra hour to make the event viable?
To staff?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. It was more about flexibility for things like performer encores or last minute schedule changes than economic impact. Thank you.
Counselor, you're good? Okay, Counselor Trauss, I didn't know, sorry, did you have your hand up to speak to this? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, very briefly, and I won't repeat the things I said before. I think that if we're going to extend the hours, there should be a stronger showing in the record, in the report. And this goes to the last question specifically through the presiding officer. I don't think that's been done. And for counselors to have to ask that question, to me, demonstrates that we really need to keep the status quo unless a compelling argument can be made. Now, that compelling argument, maybe it can be made. I don't know, but I haven't heard it. So I am certainly going to support the amendment. I'd like to suggest an amendment to the amendment, or maybe even a friendly amendment. And that is staff also look at the question of a potential graduated security deposit, which I think is within the scope of what's in this report that's before us today. So I think with that, I'm not going to repeat the other points that I made before. Thank you. And I would look for a second on that or some feedback.
Hey, I guess essentially that'd be adding a part B onto this, making this a A. I just don't have the clerk next to me. I think staff said they were looking at that for the end of the year when that report came back anyways, but looking to see if there would be a second or as Councillor Trousseau stated, for the graduated security deposit. Looking in chambers, I do not see one. Looking again. Councillor, there seems to be none in chambers for you today, which would still just put us back to the motion that's currently on the floor, looking to see if you had any other further comments on that, as you still have time. Looking to see the other speakers. Councillor Purple.
Thank you, and I will not be supporting the proposed motion that's currently on the table. I will stick what we have in our report from the staff in terms of the bring forward an amended special events policy at the December 2nd CAPS meeting. I will wait for that. And just one of the things, and just I mentioned it last time as well, that I actually think that 11 o'clock for downtown businesses, or certainly the ones that are open late, would have a stronger impact, because I do believe that if people leave at 11 o'clock, there are more to go out to the establishments that are open till 1 a.m. So I think, that's why I talked kind of this reasoning last time when we mentioned it. But in terms of this, I really think that what staff said, that to align it together, what we already have at the market, where it is at midnight, so we have a truly level playing field and have the opportunity for the organizers to maximize these events. So personally, I will support it when it comes back. I would support the extension. Having said that, I really think that we need to be going forward if this passes to midnight. And then really, if there are certain organizers that we feel that are not responsible, doesn't matter if it's the decibels or if it's the not potentially hiring the engineer, etc., then we might have to take it one organizer, one event, one by one. But for now, I really would like us to create a level playing field and having fair for all the organizers. It doesn't matter if it's half a kilometer to the left, to the east, or to the west. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferrer, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds used. Please proceed.
For the amendment?
Yeah, I counted your time when you were introducing it.
All right, well, I would say that, if we want to make everything balanced and level, we can't just focus on businesses and the organizers. We also have residents downtown as well, and these residents are asking me to do this. This is why we have this. I would also say that if we ended at 11 rather than 12, that would leave more time for people to filter into any type of restaurants or bars and spend their money. It's very simple. 1 extra hour where people are not at the event, they can go in and they can start shopping. So I do believe this amendment would actually help the businesses a little bit more. I'd also say that if you look at this, if you read this amendment, you will see that it is giving the deputy city manager an extra 15 minutes for those exceptional circumstances, because in the current policy, it is 45 minutes to extend. The reason we went to 60 on that second part of the amendment would be to allow the deputy city manager to make that choice case by case if we need that extension of time. So this is the balance that I'm proposing. End it at 11, because people downtown and people around in the area are asking for this. But it also gives that discretion to the deputy city manager case by case to extend if they need to. I'd also add that we did get some communications from some of the organizers saying that they wouldn't necessarily need to go to the 12 o'clock hour. They would be finishing at 11 o'clock. So because of that feedback, because of the feedback that we've gotten from residents, that I've gotten from residents, and that whole balance perspective, it gives more time for people to walk into bars or restaurants to spend their money. So economically, the impact on this motion would be more beneficial than the 12 o'clock motion. That's why I'm looking for support for this, and that's why this motion is directed in that way.
Thank you. Looking to see if there's further speakers before calling the question. Seeing none, calling the question.
Trousseau votes yes.
Closing the vote, the motion fails 2-3.
Thank you. As that resolves the amendment that was on the floor, returning the control of the chair to Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you. All right, that is the amendment to the amendment. I believe that would be the end of that item. Just a second. Okay, so now we're back at the main staff recommendation. So I do have some speakers that have already spoke, so I will look at committee and visiting members. None? Okay, let's call the question.
Council votes yes.
Counselor Prival?
Could I actually get a clarification on this one to make sure that what are we voting on? Can I get a clarification, please?
Councilor, this is the main motion, and it's supposed to be the report from staff's engagement with the public to be received.
Thank you.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now we are on items for direction. There was 2 items pulled. That was 2.2 property standards related demolition, and then 2.3 parks and recreation master plan update. I will begin with 2.2, looking to committee to move the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Pelosa, seconded by Councillor McAllister. Looking to committee for any comments or questions. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you. And through the chair, first off, appreciate bylaw bringing this forward. This is definitely a property that is high on my list in terms of feedback I often receive from ward residents. Depends what they grew up with it being. Was a Dominion grocery store at one point, then a bingo hall, then a buffet. And it's been unfortunately a real problem property in the last few years. The property was rezoned for residential. I mean, ultimately, we want to see the properties utilized for what they were rezoned for. But when the properties are left derelict and the owners don't actually keep the properties up to code, we get into situations like this, unfortunately. So I thank staff for the work they've done on this. I hear constantly from residents that this is a real problem property. There's been break-ins, vandalism, illegal dumping, and in October there was a fire at the property as well. So I'm asking for support from committee and ultimately council to please have this property torn down. It's sat vacant for too long, and it really is a public safety concern for residents at this point. So I'm looking for your support. Thank you.
Anybody else on committee? Councillor Pepper.
Thank you, staff. Very happy to see this in the report. I do drive in that area regularly, and the sooner the better for everyone. Thank you.
Anybody else? Visiting members? Oh, I got Councillor Trosso. You're next. Go ahead. Councillor, do you mind unmuting your mic?
Thank you very much through the chair. I certainly concur with the substance of this motion. This property needs to be removed. It's a derelict property. It's a nuisance property. And according to the staff report, under the summary in the last sentence, it says it's been neglected for several years. So I guess my question is, how does it get to the point of being neglected for several years? Why wasn't this action taken earlier? And that's a direct question to the staff.
Thank you, Councillor. I will go to Mr. Catola.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you for that question. We use a progressive enforcement protocol for these vacant buildings. Since the original building has been vacant, we have issued $3,100 in administrative monetary penalties. We have also taken numerous actions in terms of boarding up the building, cleaning up the property, removing graffiti to a fee of $7,300, which are directly added to the taxes of the property, in addition to our inspection fees and other administration fees.
Thank you, Councillor. Counselor, your mute, I believe, might be.
Through the chair, a follow-up. You speak of a progressive enforcement protocol. And I'm really glad that you used the term protocol. And my question is, what is this protocol? Is this protocol something that exists in writing in your department? That's the question.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Katolik.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, we have a council policy on municipal compliance, and in that council policy, it gives our officers discretion. Each of our files is different in nature, and we have discretion to use a number of different tools, starting from warnings to court actions and everything in between. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to follow up, and I think it's important, just as a point of reference, to remind everyone that the discretion that this council grants to this department is very different than the discretion that the building officer has, which is statutory, whereas this discretion is granted by council. So I think it would be within the scope of council's authority here to ask if perhaps, without taking away your discretion, because we all realize that there's case by case differences, but might it not be useful at this point to try to articulate in a more precise written policy the processes, protocols, and timelines for not minor code violations, but significant, substantial code violations that rise to the level of a public nuisance?
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Mather.
Through the chair. So I wouldn't make any specific recommendations without having legal in on that conversation, as that there's a very specific case law that we deal with these the related work that is undertaken in municipal compliance. So I would also rely on them to be able to provide some feedback, but I wouldn't recommend any changes until we engage legal.
Thank you, Mr. Mathers. Counselor.
To follow up through the chair, without stopping this meeting to ask to go into closed session without having any preparation for council, I'm wondering if you could bring us back to the council meeting, that information, because I am inclined to want to add an amendment to this, asking for your department, and I don't want to legislate what that is right now and put it on the table, but I do want to ask your department if you could come back with more information about whether that's feasible. Or I guess I could put that request on the table right now, and that would give you ample time to discuss with council whether that's feasible. So,
Point
Chair.
of order.
Go ahead, state your point.
I don't necessarily have a problem with what the councilor is asking, but I don't think it's directly related to what is before us right now. So I think the councilor's comments are more reserved for bringing something back in a different format, but for what we're asking for, this is a demo for a very specific property.
And if I can respond to that.
Hold on, Counselor, just a second. Okay, I'm going to accept that point of order. Counselor, we need to be specific to the item.
Okay, specific to this item is the fact that, in my view, and what's admitted in the report, is that these violations have sat there too long. And when I ask a question about what your protocol is, I just get a very, very vague, we have discretion. And this is not the first time that derelict properties like this have come to the council table for demolition. We see this, it's a recurring problem. It happens again and again. And what I would like to know, if today is not the proper time to do it, which I think it is, but your ruling, I'm not going to challenge your ruling. How do we go about initiating this discussion? Because we just cannot have this continue.
Thank you, Counselor. I was just speaking with the clerk. You are able to bring that to a future meeting of the committee But I do ask you if we can just keep to the item that we are discussing, but you are more than welcome to bring that to a future meeting of this committee.
Thank you. And finally, through the chair, I will certainly do that. And again, I'm grateful that staff has brought this to us for a demolition, but I think the public interest would be better served if we had a better idea of what the timeline was on this, because this has sat there too long. Nonetheless, I will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Looking to committee. Councillor McAllister, you have 3 minutes and 46 seconds.
Thank you. And through the chair, to the question about timelines, which I agree with Councillor Trasso on, I think I would be remiss without asking that. I've been pleased in terms of previous demos we've done in my ward, the progress that has been made, but I would like to know in terms of next steps, what we anticipate in terms of timeline for demo of this property.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Katolik.
Yes, through the chair, once assuming council approves this, we will do a designated substance survey, and that survey will identify any hazardous materials in the building. That designated substance survey will then form part of a procurement process. Because of the size of the building, this will definitely be over 15,000 to demolish. And the designated substance survey recommendations would have to be taken into account as part of the demolition. So my estimate would be this is between 3 and 6 months to demolish, but it highly depends on what we get back from the procurement.
Thank you. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and through the chair, appreciate that answer. I know residents anxiously await the property being dealt with. I do just want to end on this note. I don't love getting the reputation as being a bit of a demo guy, as some people have referred to me. But really, I'm trying to send a signal in that please secure your sites, use them for what you've asked them to be used for. We are in a housing crisis. I want to see these sites redeveloped. And I don't like having to come to committee and council to ask for these demolitions. This is something I want private property owners to initiate. But at the end of the day, I like that we have this as a last recourse, because we need to send the signal that you cannot leave these properties to decay. It's not helping the neighborhood. Residents are upset with it. It causes a lot of problems, and Londoners are quite frankly fed up. So thank you for putting this demo forward. And once again, I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Apologies for calling you the demo guy before this meeting. Yeah, Councillor Trusso, you have 1 minute and 2 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. Quick question. Staff mentioned procurement and getting studies done. This will all be done at the expense of the property owner. Is that correct?
Thank you. Mr. Katolik.
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes. Last question. Are you able to give this committee a rough estimate as to I'm not sure the term is how much equity or how much of a lien the city has on this property now, but how much of an interest does the city actually have on this property now when you take this all in? This is just informational.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to Mr. Katolik.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. As I mentioned, we already have issued $7,300 in contractor fees, another $3,100 in administrative monetary penalties. My estimation of the demolition and the designated substance survey will approach 6 figures. So this will be likely over 100,000 added to the tax roll if the property owner does not pay the fees.
Thank you. Councillor Trosso, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Look into committee. Last call. Anyone online? Councillor Trosso, I see your hands up. You taking it down? Okay, let's call the question.
Trosso votes yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we are on our next pulled item from the consent for items for direction. It is item 2.3 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I am excited about this one, so I do want to go to staff and get a summary if you're able.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, we share that excitement as well. There are a number of city teams that are before you today asking for your endorsement and support for launching the update for our Parks and Rec Master Plan. We do the plan generally every 5 years that's looking at our capital infrastructure needs throughout the city and what we need to do to provide rec and sports services and parks and forestry services for the community as well. What we've articulated for you here is a timeline for the project that includes extensive community engagement as well, which is an important component of this review as well. We've also articulated the scope that we're looking to do with this review. You'll note that it is fairly involved in the park side, more so than the facility and community center side. We recognize there's been a number of legislative changes that have come that have more affected the park side, and we've got a lot of feedback from the community that they're looking for more ideas and more opportunities to engage on parks matters as well. So we're really going to be working towards getting our handle on our growth needs, our service improvement needs, really looking at the user experience for parks. And then bringing that back to you for approval in the draft late next year, final report in early 2026 in order to fit in with the development charges background study and the multi-year budget. So with that, I'll turn things back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Yeoman. Looking to committee. I have Councillor Trussell first and Councillor McAllister. Councillor Trussell.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I pulled this because I do have one pressing question that I think could lead to an amendment. And that is when you get to Part B and you list what's endorsed for review with the update, in Part IX, you list a couple of specific things. And what I feel is missing from that list is public washrooms. Could you advise me why public washrooms was not included there, or is it included someplace else, or have we already dealt with this? But why is that not there?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Yeoman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a great question. Public washrooms are in parks and recreation facilities are already built into the service standard that we have. So it's implicit in the review that's actually going to be occurring. The services that are identified there are services we actually don't have provision targets for in service standards at the moment. They've been identified in the previous master plan and previous reports that have come to council as well. We really do want to get a handle on them for the community and make sure that we know that we're delivering on in the future. So happy to have that.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yes, thank you. And that's a very good answer to my question. Unfortunately, when one reads the four corners of this document, this is through the chair, when one reads the four corners of this document, you see this list and it doesn't say including but not limited to or such as, and my worry is that that's going to be missed by a lot of people. Would it create a problem for you if we added the word public washroom to 9, or if we didn't do that, add something saying it being noted that public washroom standards are already included in our evaluation?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to go to staff in a second, but before I go to staff, I just want to remind committee, the gracious clerk has reminded me that we don't have anything moved or seconded on the floor. So after I get staff to answer this question, I am going to look to committee to move and second this item. So please go ahead.
That was a question for staff.
Mr. Yeoman.
Forgive me, Mr. Chair. I thought you were trying to get someone to move and second the report.
Oh, okay, we'll stop now, and I will go to you for the councillor's question, but I am looking for someone to move. Okay, Councillor Pribble, Councillor McAllister seconded. Okay, now let's go back to the question for Councillor Trussell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, we're definitely in committee's hand here and happy to have that specificity that's built in. I do understand the concern the public may not see that from the report. We'll definitely make sure that that's part of the engagement as it rolls out and the information that's out there so the community is aware of it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, and in which case I would just like to make a very, very slight amendment, adding the words public washroom to B subdivision IX.
Okay, looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Pribble. Okay, looking for speakers to the amendment. Okay, none. Let's call the question.
Trosso votes yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, back on the main motion as amended. Oh, I do have actually, Councilor McAllister is next. Oh, actually, hold on. Sorry, just a second. Councilor Trosso, before I go to Councilor McAllister, I noticed that you didn't speak on the amendment. I just wanted to go back to you before I go to Councilor McAllister on the amended motion.
I would say that I made the amendment, so I'd be in favor of it. And I don't think there's any dispute as to whether or not washrooms are an important component here. So it's really just a question of wording. From what I hear, I don't think the amendment changes the substance of this more, but it makes it more clear and more precise.
Order.
Okay, just a second.
He
State
asked
your
me a
point.
question. I'm trying to answer it.
Yeah, just the East Cry vote did pass successful, unanimous to get washrooms in, just for the, just knowing that Councilor Trousseau is not an East Scribe, so we're back on the main motion as amended with washrooms in it, as that was 100% successful.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm going to go back to Councilor Trosso, if you wanted to make any other comment.
No, the amendment has been passed, so I don't think I need to respond to it anymore.
Okay, thank you. I have Councilor McAllister next.
Thank you, through the chair. I just have a few questions on some parts of this. In terms of BIV, if staff could speak a bit more in terms of what they're looking for equity and inclusion strategies and opportunities. I'm just curious, and I'm sure the public would be, in terms of what they're looking for that.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Yeoman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So the 2019 Parks and Rec Master Plan predated a lot of the city's work related to anti-racism and anti-oppression. There are some linkages that are in there. We're setting up for a lot of that work that was coming forward. What we really want to do, though, is to work with that team as part of our steering committee, continue to work with the community as well, and identify what other opportunities there are to dig deeper on this matter going forward.
Thank you. Councilor.
Thank you, and through the chair. I would also like to say, in terms of equity, I mean, I would also view that in terms of understanding the social, economic background of the city, recognizing in terms of areas where they don't have as many opportunities, that public facilities are really folks only option. So just keeping that on the radar. I have a number of facilities where I hear that a lot. Really, it's the only facility or park space that they can utilize. So I appreciate the answer in terms of that work that needs to be included, but also keeping that in mind as well. I'm also wondering, in terms of park types, where would district level parks fall? Because I know in terms of the undertaking, those are almost, I don't want to say multi-generational, but they're larger undertakings. If you'd speak a bit more to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to use a fancy work of park typologies that we're going to be reviewing as part of this. Basically, how do we classify our parks? What should the public expect from certain park types? All the way from a very small, very focused neighborhood parking facility, all the way up to the ones that are providing more of a regional benefit and a draw. So we've got a bit of work, I think, to do there in terms of looking at what the lay of the land is currently, and then what adjustments need to be made going forward, and how do we really set things up well for the community.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, and once again through the chair. Also wondering, in terms of the work that will go into this, I always notice, with master plans, I appreciate the long-term planning that goes into it. I think it's necessary, but I do recognize there's always budget asks with it. From what I understand, this would more hit us in the next cycle, but recognizing obviously there are servicing demands on parks right now that are great. Will anything be coming back in the interim, or is this essentially we're parking this plan and we won't make any decisions on this until the next multi-year?
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Yeoman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So we'll continue to advance the capital budget that we have that's informed by the 2019 master plan while this work is all underway. Should the report the actual master plan that council adopts have greater service improvement needs or growth needs, those will be reflected in both the development charges study and in future capital budget submissions for the next multi-year budget. And then at that point, council can determine how do they want to provide a service for that. We'll have costing information though that will be coming out of this, so you'll have some of that information to inform that so for some of those future decisions.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, and through the chair once again, and recognizing that a lot's changed since 2019. I appreciate the undertaking, and this is a lot of work, but I would say the growth is already upon us. And so I personally don't have a problem if Parks has to come to an annual update and say, look, you know, we can't wait till the next multi-year budget. So I recognize this is the master plan, but I also get a lot of feedback in terms of Parks and the need to increase servicing in our current growth forecast. So thank you.
Councillor Purple?
Thank you, through the chair to the staff. With the projected growth for our city and the residential units we are approving, I honestly believe that this and mobility transportation master plan are key to the future quality of life for all the Londoners, and we really must get it right. And I have a question for you on page 64. When I look at the timeline, and if you can maybe explain this one to me, the submission is Q1 2026 of the master plan update for council approval. Then the paragraph before it states, into 2028 development charges background study. And the study word is a little bit puzzling for me because we need the next multi-year budget is 28 to 31. And my question is the study going to go beyond, or is the study going to be done so all this will be able to be included in the following multi-year budget? And please, it's not just kind of yes or no. If you could go into more detail, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Yeoman.
Through Mr. Chair, I'm happy to provide some clarification on that. So the development charges background study, the bylaw date will be effective as of 2028. That's when the new rates will be in. So there's quite a bit of work that has to go into that to actually do the calculations to get there. So master plans need to be completed early in 2026 in order to then to have the modeling occur throughout that process to actually have the bylaw approved in 2027 for that. So what we're looking at with this is needs that will be identified that will be factored into that more long range planning for collection, for revenue collection for supporting our infrastructure, but also be factored into the capital forecast. It'll be in the multi-year budget. So it'll be for the next multi-year budget period and then beyond that as well too.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm hearing is that we will have all the steps done. So when we get to the planning of 2028 in 2027, we will be making the best, the most accurate decision based on what we will be receiving from the staff.
Mr. Yeoman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. And that's why we do have a fairly aggressive timeline here to make sure that decision points are before council for the next multi-year budget to factor in with the collection of other needs that council will be considering at that time.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you very much. No more questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Looking for further comments, questions? Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you, first, my appreciation for the report that's in front of us today and the recommendations that are provided herein. I wanted to just ask a question. In the Part B where it says what the scope of the work is, in the current master plan, it talks a little bit about London being the lowest park maintenance operating cost per capita. Not something I think we should be proud of, but that's, I think it's something that we need to spend more money on. But I will say that it says it's outside of the scope to talk about the operational service delivery standard. I'm just wondering what that difference is between the reference in the current plan versus what we're doing for the future plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Yeoman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so that's a great question, and that is an interesting stat that does, I reflect on a regular basis. Yes, it's indicated that the operational needs are outside the scope of this. However, they are informed by the results of this. So this report is really looking, this study will look at what are the infrastructure needs, what are the parks going to be looking like, and then from there we factor in what that looks like in order to maintain. We're obviously having a bit of an iterative process with that, but separate to this work, there's something in Council's strategic plan with direction for us to actually be reviewing our operating service standards to make sure that they're keeping current, and we'll be bringing that forward as well. So they're running part and parcel.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. Much appreciated. When it comes to our conversations with the public using our Get Involved and other methods, and I'm really looking forward to some school level engagement on this as well, I'm wondering how we'll capture climate change. So in my ward in particular, I have a lot of residents that tell me that in order to access facilities, especially recreational facilities, ice time, they have to drive from the north end to the south or the east or somewhere else. And I'm just wondering, how do we capture that in terms of our climate, in terms of our climate plan and the fact that people are saying they're having to drive across town a couple times a week in order to access facilities?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to staff.
Thank you. And through the chair, we do recognize that some amenity types just can't be built at a neighborhood level. It is just too expensive, and we've actually come away from, you used arenas as an example, and we've actually moved away from neighborhood-based single pad facilities because they are very inefficient in terms of their cost and their utilization. And so arenas, as an example, are more of a supply of arenas across the ice, recognizing that some people will have to drive. There isn't a high volume of people who walk to hockey rinks to begin with equipment and other things. So the reality for many sports is that there is not a high enough demand to be able to support neighborhood level facilities, and that's why they are considered either district or city-wide facilities. I will just add that obviously the addition of what council approved was the addition of live streaming equipment in some of our arenas, and that provides another opportunity for people to watch hockey without having to travel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, much appreciated. The other questions I had regarding the equity diversity component of the plan going forward, and similar to the having to drive for services, I've heard concern from residents specifically around the need for more women's only swim. How would we kind of capture that information in our data?
Mr. McGonigal.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, the reality for us is that we operate 4 indoor pools, and we facilitate access to an additional 2 pools at startech.com and Stony Creek. So we are a little bit constrained simply by inventory, and wherever possible, we have worked hard to add the additional materials and supplies required, curtains, etc., that would help us support those women-only swim opportunities. But we are a little bit constrained by the reality of the inventory available.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. And so when we look at things like equity, socioeconomic conditions, things like that, how do we overlay our neighborhood data with this information in order to inform the plan? And one of the concerns I hear is that this would be great to do in the near term, and would this be something that we'd have to await the plan in order to be able to move forward with any opportunities?
Ms. Smith.
Thank you. And for the chair, this is a really good question. And I think this also aligns with our Play Your Way, our subsidy fund. It also aligns with our request to waive fee for community centers and along with our user fees. And we do often, as you know now, on holidays, PDAs, we offer free programming for everyone, and really looking at how we get that message out. So we, I think in 2025, my area is also reviewing our user fees. We're reviewing our Play Your Way subsidized program to making sure it meets the needs. And we're also reviewing our waive the fee policy for rental of space at our community centers. Our staff on my team recently took the training through ARAO on the equity tool, and we will be applying the equity tool, and we continue now to apply the equity tool on all the programs. So regardless of this mid-year, 5-year review, in our recreation programs and facilities, we are continually looking at what is the need, what is the demand, engaging with the community to make our programs more equitable, more accessible, as often as we can free, so that we really bring our diversity of Londoners into our programs and our facilities. So we're actively working on that all the time.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. I just have a couple more questions. In the current master plan, it talks about the 67% change in terms of numbers of seniors in our community from 2021 to 2041. And seeing that trend is sticking with us, I'm just wondering what kind of seniors programming and engagement we're looking to plan for, because in the report initially it mentioned therapeutic lines of planning, and I'm just wondering if we'll continue to explore those avenues or if that work of exploration was done in the previous plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, and to the chair, really good question. So on top of when we look at our provisional targets we're looking at not just population, but demographic changes. We're looking also at best practices on new and evolving programs for seniors, older adults, for example. So we have ratios on what we do now for our community centers, our amenities in many of our programs. So this will be part of this review too, and we will be coming back to you with some potential changes, with some enhancements, and maybe with some changes to our current provisional targets for community centers, amenities, and programs.
Thank you. Councillor Rahman, you have 1 minute and 47 seconds, so you're doing okay.
Wonderful. Thank you for the time check. My last question just pertains to outdoor basketball courts. So I know the previous plan identified that there were shortages and gaps with basketball courts. Have we closed that gap that was identified? And I know in my ward in particular, there's ongoing gaps, and that's something I hear quite often from residents. Very pleased to see one at the District Park in Foxfield. Just wondering if when we were talking about in the earlier, that there would be expectations for how many per capita, do we have a basketball target as well?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to staff.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So we are making progress. There are a number of amenities, though we are not meeting the target on. Well, I'll be quite frank. I think that's sort of reflected in the level of funding that has been identified. And for the growth side of things, parks and recreation services are the only service that's capped actually for what you can collect. So we actually do have a number of unfunded needs. We're looking at a strategy on how to address that with this as well, and actually trying to document and better reflect some of those gap matters that you're identifying, Councillor, because I think that's a good outcome coming forward for the community.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, looking to committee. Further questions, comments? Online? Let's call the question.
Trusso votes yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
All right, that is it for items of direction. We have next deferred matters, additional business. I have been queued up by Councillor Pelosa, so I will look to you, Councillor.
Thank you. Ever so briefly, just as the last meeting of CAPS before the next cycle, and I just want to thank the chair who took over partway through the term and chaired and will be staying on, and to Councillor McAllister, who'll be replacing me as vice chair. Just thank you for your service.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. All right. That leaves us with confidential items. That's the last one. So this is a item for land acquisition solicitor client privilege, commercial or financial information of the corporation with monetary value, position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction for negotiation purposes. A matter pertaining to the proposed or pending acquisition of land by the municipality, including communications necessary for that purpose, Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, commercial and financial information that belongs to the municipality and has monetary value or potential monetary value, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality. So I will look to committee to move into camera. Moved by Councillor McAllister, seconded by Councillor Pelosa. I think we can do this. Okay, it'll go up in your e-scribe right now.
Russell votes yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we just need a few minutes to lock up the doors. Okay, we are back in public session. I will look to Councillor Pribble to report out.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to report that our committee was in confidential session, point 6.1 on the agenda, land acquisition, solicitor client privilege, commercial or financial information of the corporation with monetary value, position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction for negotiation purposes. And progress has been made in this item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That leaves us to our last item. That's adjournment. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor McAllister, seconded by Councillor Pribble. We'll do this by hand. All in favor for adjournment? All those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.